Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Reading Rural, y'all. I'm your host, Dr. Shay Parton, and today we are on our third installment of Christopher Barzak's The Gone Away Place, where I'll be discussing my reaction to the book as a rural reader. So let's get to it. I recently sat down with Chris to record his author talk. Yes! And through our discussion, I was able to talk out one of the reasons why I deeply connected with this book that I hadn't really been able to put into words before we talked about it. So that's what I'm going to talk about for this reaction episode. Aside from understanding and feeling at home in the book's setting of rural Ohio, both the landscape and the cultural norms featured in the text, the way that Barzak depicts the collective trauma of a rural town really pulled at something that I hadn't engaged with in a long time, really maybe even ever, and definitely not something I talked about on the show before. Because of the size of rural towns and the way we know everyone, loss of life hits a bit different in rural places. And yes, there's the stereotype that everybody knows everybody else's business and it's always positioned in a negative thing, but actually it's not really all bad. If something bad happened to a farmer, say, in our community, the rest of us farmers would be out pulling in their crops. So the fact that we knew what was going on in folks' families meant that we knew better how to support them than if we didn't know those things. And so those stereotypes, I just wanted to say here, are just kind of blown out of proportion, especially in a negative way. And so because size lends itself to that, when we lose someone in the community, it feels, I think, different probably than what it does for bigger places to lose someone. And I hadn't really processed that until reading Ellie's story and talking with Chris. For example, when your town is only 800 people and 90 of them are killed in a tornado outbreak, that's over 10% of the population. The magnitude is relative, right? While still living in Indiana, a tornado ripped through a tiny town called Henryville, south of where I was from, and the destruction was heartbreaking. The town rallied together to help one another in a similar way to the way that the folks of Newfoundland do in the book, supporting each other the best they can to heal and recover, and I reckon they probably still are. Devastation like that doesn't heal and go away when the news coverage does, and it reminded me of the more recent devastation in Kentucky. On a smaller scale, the trauma of loss of even one life has a huge impact on the community. For example, when I was in school, we lost a kid in the grade above me to a car accident after he light checked a highway and ran a stop sign. If you don't know what light checking is, it's you don't stop when you approach a stop sign, you turn your lights off. If you don't see lights coming either way, then you don't stop at the stop sign, you run it. And that's what this kid did, and he died in that accident. One of my favorite English teachers committed suicide when I was still in high school. The sister of a friend died of cystic fibrosis before anyone expected her to. They rode my bus. I knew their family. My senior year, two of my classmates got into a fight where one accidentally killed the other one. So we lost both of them. And a couple of kids died in a car accident actually right outside my house when they were going too fast, hydroplaned in the rain and hit a tree that bordered the soybean field across the road from me. And there have been even more since I left. And in each of these instances, the school basically shuts down. It becomes a place of collective processing and healing. In my experiences, class time was spent sharing memories or talking about how we were all dealing with the loss. I mean, my class only had 50 people in it. So if two are no longer there, the absence is extremely noticeable and felt deeply. It was understood and expected that no one would be at school during the days of visitations and funerals. And so what I learned was this: even individual traumas become collective in rural places. And The Gone Away Place brought insight into that and helped me think about it in a way I never had before. I think every rural town has some version of the story, has trauma that it might have dealt with but might have not. So I think teaching this book through a critical place-based lens could be really helpful for making space for students to process those traumas. And I'll talk a little bit more about some ideas for possible ways to do that in the next video when I talk about teaching ideas. So stay tuned for that. So keep an eye out for next week's videos on teaching ideas that I just mentioned, and for my author talk with Barzak. Until then, y'all come back now, would ya?